Hello everyone, this is Ed Birdie again. I wanted to make another video here to show you some of the new functionality that's been added to the lip sync module in Vixen 3, and to also clarify a few things about mappings and show you some of the things that I've done to make mappings a little bit more user friendly for certain types of devices. I'm sorry, for certain types of elements. So we're going to use the previous videos as a starting point for these. If you haven't viewed those first, I would recommend that you at least go and look at the section on setting up a map for a standard string and use that, because we're going to work from that point going forward. So to go ahead and start off here, so in the previous set of videos we kind of walked through setting up a standard lip sync element, like a holiday choro element that had 8 possible elements inside of the lip sync. Inside, like if it's a singing tree, it had like an outline, eyes open, eyes closed, a top of the mouth, a middle of the mouth, and a bottom of the mouth. And we walked through how to go through these 8 sections and create a map um, to map this whole element as a whole to phonemes or phonemes. Now, that's not the only type of element that you can use. You can, there's some like to create their own custom elements where they use pixels. So, for example, as you can see here, here's a second type of element that has kind of the same general elements. It has an outline. This one has an eye open left, eye open right versus an open and close, but it still has the mouth top, mouth middle, bottom narrow. But in this case, instead of each of these being a single string, they're comprised of pixels. So like the outline has 24 pixels in it. The eye left may have 8 pixels. Now these numbers are somewhat arbitrary. I set this up for the demo here, but you kind of get the idea that in this case you have 8 elements that are comprised of multiple pixels. And this is where we're going to start, and we're going to start with this one and go through this one first. With the software that's out there today, you can do this type of element. It's just a little bit more tedious than it needs to be. And based upon feedback that I got from people who are currently using the software, I added some functionality to make this a little bit more friendlier. Finally, there is a pixel matrix. Now this is new functionality. This is something that if you have the previous version of the software that I posted, you will not see this. What this is it's pretty much what it says. It's a 48 by 48 pixel matrix that could be used on a megatree or just as a matrix in itself. And this is newer functionality that we're going to kind of go over toward the end of the video. So let's go ahead and jump into it. We're going to show a mapping for the pixel string element here first. So I'm going to jump on over to a sequence that I'd set up a little bit earlier here. It uses the Alvin and the Chipmunks sequence that we used in video 3, or in one of our previous videos. I think it might have been video 2 or video 1, whatever it was. So as you can see here, we have our display element, which is the standard string tree, and each of its sub elements, and our elements, our speech elements, phrase elements, are matched, as we set them up in the previous build. And so this is really nothing. This part of this is where we left off in the previous video. So let's go ahead and look at the pixel string tree. So the key to lip syncing is you have to have your maps that specify how each of these phonemes will map into each of the actual pixel elements. So I'm going to delete this and start from scratch here. So from the previous video, we had set up more of a standard map for the standard string tree. What we want to do now is we want to create a new one. So we'll come to the lip sync max, we'll hit new, Now something that's different in this version is now when you hit new, instead of it just creating a new map for you, it actually asks you what type of map you want. So in this case it's asking, do you want a string mapping or is it a pixel matrix slash megatree mapping? Well, in this case it's still a string mapping, because even though it's a string of pixels, it's still a string nevertheless. So the editor knows to give you something that's more geared toward implementing this type of map for these types of elements versus the pixel matrix, which we'll get into later. So I'll go ahead and hit string mapping, and when you hit the mapping it's going to give you kind of a default dialog here, or a default editor, that you then have to go into and assign the pixel elements to. Now if you click assign, you'll then be presented with the list of display elements here on the left. Now look, you'll notice that there's a couple things different here. Primarily there's this thing called allow groups, and the reason why this is here is that with the previous version of the software, whenever you added something to the map, it typically dealt with only the child elements. So if you hit pixel string here and you added it, if you notice, the only thing that it adds is the lowest level element, lowest level lighting element to the map itself. It would not add groups, and which was fine. I mean, you could work this way, but then what would happen is you would end up with a very large matrix here of map elements that you would have to fill out, which in reality most of the times you did not need, because for the outline here, in a lot of cases you would just end up selecting all of these if you wanted, or all of them for a particular section if you wanted them on, which was somewhat redundant. So in this case I went in, reset this, and allowed the ability to add the groups also. So in this case I can say I want to add groups, but I'll remove the recursive option so it doesn't recurse through them, and in this case I'll add just the groups. So if you notice, it adds these groups, but it doesn't add the pixels. Now it's completely up to you how you want to do this. You can add the pixels, you're free to do it in any combination whatsoever, but this was a kind of a requested addition to this functionality. So coming back in and selecting the groups, you notice that the map gets a lot smaller. We're kind of dealing, even though we're dealing with pixels, even though we're dealing with pixels here, we can still kind of work on the string level. And so some of you may ask, well, why do you want to use pixels then if you're going to work with them as strings? In reality, it is, you can, with these mappings, you can do, you can kind of do some neat things where, for example, you don't select any of the outline mappings, and you only, you leave all of these blank, and then you work with everything that's left here. And then when you're sequencing, you might say, well, I know the outline is on all the time. Instead of having the pixel map or the lip sync map drive the outline, I'm going to use like an alternating sequence, so that when this tree is singing, the outline is maybe switching between gradients, or it's doing an alternating, and so you can still do some neat things here. You just have to get a little bit more creative on what you have the map control and then what you have to control manually. So anyway, let me go ahead, I'm just going to very quickly do a rough kind of fill this out here really quick. It should take me just a second. So we'll do our mouth middle here. I always like to do a mouth middle there. Bottom. Let's see, narrow, and then okay, I think I oops, I forgot that guy. And our rest, I always like to use actually I think I'm going to move that to the top and make the rest the middle. Okay, so I very quickly went in and filled out the map. I think I'll go ahead and just make the outline green and make it kind of an evil looking tree, and make the eyes red. Okay. So now very quickly I have filled out our map here, and we'll call this our pixel map. Okay, so we're done now. I'll click the OK key here, and now we have our pixel map. And if you notice, our standard string map is still listed as the default map in this case, and our pixel map isn't. If you don't know what pixel maps are, I really recommend you go back and look at the previous set of video. I'm sorry, the default map is. I'd recommend you go back and look at the previous set of videos to to understand what that is. Okay, so for now then, we have our existing work here, and we have our pixel map set up here. And just to keep things easy, I'm going to go ahead and change over to the pixel map to make it the default map now. So as you can see here, now it's selected. It's not required, but I just I tend to always just quote by default set that to whatever element I'm currently working on. So what I'm going to do is, to kind of save some time here, is I'm just going to copy these elements down to, actually I'm going to just move them. I'm going to do a cut and paste down to my pixel tree. So now I have all these elements copied here. Now if you remember correctly, each one of these elements has a mapping assigned to it. So like in this case, I have it on the pixel string, but the mapping is still set to the standard string map. So if I hit play right now, nothing's going to happen, because when these play, they're going to say, well, I'm using a standard string mapping, but it won't find any of these elements here as part of the pixel string. So nothing will match and nothing will play, as can kind of be evidenced here. Like when you look at the preview, nothing happens, and that's because of the mapping. So in this case, we need to change the mapping of the elements that we copied, because when they copied down, they didn't automatically change the mapping. So I've added a new feature here called Change Effect Map. This is typically grayed out, and how it is enabled is you have to select elements, and then you have to have more than one pixel map defined. So in I keep saying pixel map, one lip sync map defined. Let me go ahead and copy. I forgot to copy this down. Let me get it too. Okay. All right. So this feature that I was showing is very good for changing a mass number of elements without having to go through and manually click each and every one of these. So I'll select all of these, and I will go. Now this change effect map is now enabled because I have elements selected, and I have more than one map defined. So I'm going to go through and change all of these over to a pixel map. So I select that, and now if I open up any one of these now, you'll see that they've all switched over to use the new pixel map, and that can be evidenced by, I hit play now. I should see something on the screen here. So I have my outline here, my red eyes, and all of those bits and pieces. So that was a feature that was kind of really missing. After I started creating some of my own elements, I come to the conclusion very quickly that we needed to have some type of ability to better support cut and paste operations. So this is what this has been added for. So this is kind of a quick overview of how this can better support strings of pixels, and it is really just a tweak to the existing functionality here for of the existing string editor. So now we're going to look into the matrix functionality, which is new functionality, brand new. This is something that hasn't been seen before, but it kind of addresses the need for people who have like matrices and they want to use this type of functionality with their matrix or their megatree based upon how it's configured. So as I mentioned earlier, we've defined a 48 by 48 matrix of pixels. So you can see by expanding them here, you have 48 by 48. So this particular element has over 2,000 pixels in it that we can use. It's a fairly decent sized matrix, or a fairly decent sized tree. So you kind of get the idea on this. So jumping into the map, which is really the key part of this, is for the map, I now have two maps that I created from the other videos, the standard string map and the string pixel map. So now I want to create a new type of map called a matrix map, a pixel matrix megatree map. And this is comprised of 48 strings, each containing 48 pixels each. So I click OK, and I'm presented with the selection box again. And there's some new, if you'll see, there's some new fields in this box where it's asking me, are the strings columns, are they rows, and then is the orientation of the strings going from top to bottom, bottom to top. Well, by default, this fills out the settings to be kind of more compatible with the matrix preview element that is in Vixen. So you can change these however you want. It just depends, something that's a little bit more pertinent to your setup. And the control is still very simple at the moment. I mean, it just kind of assumes a matrix. I really didn't get into doing any back and forth type setups, but if there's enough demand for it, we can look at figuring out how we can do that. So in this case, the node selection does revert back to some of the older functionality. Is in the previous version of the string editor, if you remember, you were only allowed to select lowest level pixels, and I kind of still decided it made sense to enforce that rule here also, because it made the matrix editor, which we'll see in a little bit, a lot simpler. So in this case, I say, well, I want to select the matrix tree and all of its elements, so I just click add here, and then make sure my add recursively is set, and then it goes through and drills down through each one, every one of these columns, and adds those for me. So now I have a map that's going to have over 2,000 elements in it that we can work with. So I select OK, and this is new here. Now I'm selected with a matrix editor, and so first thing I want to do is I'll kind of zoom it to what makes sense for what I'm working on. And this is a very simple editor that I put together, and we can, once we get a little bit of mileage on it and people have used it, I'm open to doing additional improvements on it. So in this case here, you'll see that we have our assign key, kind of like we did with the string editor. We now have a zoom key, and then we have our phone me selector. And what this is this is a means of scrolling through what we want the matrix to look like for each and every mouth position. So in this case, with the case of the matrix editor here, we have to actually draw what each of the mouth positions is on our matrix, so that as it's going through them in a sequence, it can render these. So to do that, I have this color editor here, where I can pick a color, say, okay, I want to draw with red, and click OK. So it comes up here and it sets the red color, and then I can go in and start setting colors manually here that correspond to the positions of where they would reside at on the pixel matrix. And then what I would have to do is, in this case, go through and do these drawings for each and every mouth position. So I kind of started the A1 there, and now this is the E position. So if you can see, it retains the position for A1, and I would go through and do each and every one of these. So you can use this matrix editor if you want. I recommend, for doing like small types of pixel matrices or mega trees, you can use this functionality. I'm thinking about adding, maybe kind of some other functions, more paint-like functionalities here with for line drawing and for fills and erase and things like that. But at the moment, there's just really it's just a simple pixel matrix editor, and to do something like erase, you had to go in and select like 0 intensity for a particular color and then go back in and erase them out manually. So for small matrices it's fine. For bigger matrices, not so much, because you're going to do a lot of clicking. So another feature I added was this import feature. And what this is that if you would prefer to edit these outside of this pixel editor, you can use this import function. And so when you click on import, what it does is it opens a dialog where it's looking for any type of file that's a bitmap, a JPEG, or a PNG file. Now, in this case, when I first popped it up, it came to some images that I found inside of Papagayo. Papagayo, of course, they have 2 different sets of mouths that you could use, and they even have the Gary Martin mouth positions. So what this import function does is say that I want to use the I have some bitmaps somewhere of all the positions and I want to use them instead. So in this case I would go to the A1 map and I say, okay, here's a drawing I have of what I want my pixel matrix to look like for A1. So I'll just select it, and what it will do is it will import that map, and it will, in the meantime, it will also automatically scale the map to the appropriate position, the appropriate size to be 48 by 48. And as you can see, this, you can do this for just about any type of video bitmap that you may have, and it will do its best to map it onto your matrix. So this is probably as good as any here to try. So once again, you have to go through and define what your matrix will look like for each and every one of these. And we'll just go through, and I'm going to turn the zoom down a little bit more. So I'm going to go through here and just load in pictures that were originally used with Papagayo and load them into the editor here. Okay, so we've gone through all of our 10 mouth positions here, and as you can see now we have something defined for each and every one of them. Alright, and I'm going to name my map here. We'll just call this matrix map. And I'll click OK. So now we have the new matrix map here that we can work with, and you click back into it, and you can go back into it and make additional tweaks to this if you want. So now that we have the map created, we're going to take and cut, just so that for purposes of the video, we're going to take and move our existing sequence work down to our matrix now and reassign the maps and show what that looks like. So I'll go through here and select the first part of this work here and copy it down to now the matrix. I guess I need to copy in the right place, don't I? Okay, paste it in. And quick note here, one of the things that I found out is that for moving around these lip sync elements, copy and paste or cut and paste works better than dragging. There's sometimes a little bit of weirdness that happens right now with dragging that I'm still trying to figure out what's causing it. Sometimes it will hang the rendering when dragging, so I'm looking at that. But for right now, if you just kind of keep your operations to copy paste, you should be fine. So I went in and I've cut and copied down the elements, and I've selected them all. So you can see they're all selected here, and now I want to change them to the new pixel map that we just created, the matrix map. So it goes through a conversion process to convert the elements over. And you see this is executing a lot slower, because for each and every one of these elements it's going through and rendering 2,000 pixels for each element here, so that it can when this comes time to play this, it can draw it appropriately. So now we have the sequence converted to use our new matrix map, pixel map, and I'm going to save it, and we'll show you what that looks like. So once again, I have my desktop recording software that doesn't always catch all of the transitions well, but I'll go ahead and show you this so that you'll at least kind of get the idea of what it's doing. So as you can see here, it's showing the matrix, and it's animating the matrix or whatnot to the actual phone music that you see here in the sequence. Now this is, like in my example here, I used the matrix, or a matrix. It could very easily be mapped to a pixel tree or a megatree also, just as easily. Just anything, because in reality a megatree is just a matrix that's overlaid over a more or less over a cone. And so I can so that's pretty much what it is. I mean, you can go back in, and if you don't like kind of the some of the pictures that it's showing, you can go back in and edit the map and change these out for what each position is, and kind of work with it that way. As your matrix size goes up and up, of course this rendering time is going to be a lot slower, because you take, for example, for 48 by 48 matrix, it's going to sit here and it's going to render over 12,000 pixels for just this first second of playing of the sequence. So some of the things to keep in mind as the matrix gets bigger and bigger and bigger, this is going to kind of get slower, because there really is a lot of work going on in the background, and it's kind of also showed by the matrix here too. So so here it's kind of up to you what you want to do for this part of it. Alright, one last thing is for I forgot to address, for your matrix editor. Say that you kind of come in here and you create your own custom piece, or or you customize an existing bitmap or something, and then when you're done you want to save it. I've added an export function here, so that when you have a particular phone me complete, you can come in and export that as a bitmap file, and then share it with someone, or just use it for later to load back in later to a different map. So that way you don't have to go back in and recreate all the work. So that's pretty much it. That's an overview of the new functionality that I've put in to the lip sync capability. I'll post an unofficial build here on the thread very soon. Now I was working with the Vixen 3 development team yesterday, and we started the process of putting this into Vixen 3.11, which I think they're going to make development builds available here pretty soon, which also has some other functionality that the other team members have been working on that that's been kind of needed for a while. So anyway, as usual, there could be bugs in this, and there probably is, but I welcome any and all feedback that you can give me, so that we can further improve on this editor. Later on, I have some ideas for doing some additional features to this, but I may defer them for a little bit, because it's already June, and I've got like 2 or 3 other major projects I need to get done before October, because it's going to be here before we know it. So, all right, thanks a lot, everyone. Bye.